Welcome to You're Grounded. I think language, communication, and translating thoughts to one another through our own perceived experiences is one of our greatest gifts and tools as human beings. Join us every episode and eavesdrop on what we're connecting on, and hopefully our chats can inspire you and your friends' conversations, and at the very least, make you feel more grounded. I'm so grateful to share this conversation with you. Okay, so we are here today with one of my very best male friends. I'm so excited to have a man on the podcast today. And today's guest is none other than a very good friend of mine, a professional athlete, I always joke with my friends that Cortez is probably one of the most dependable people in my life, reliable people. A real one is another way to say it. And I'm just so excited to get into our conversation today and share it with everybody and really just hit on some amazing topics. But before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I want to introduce Cortez.
Thank you so much, Becca.
Yes.
Man, since you first came up with the podcast idea and dropped it, I immediately obviously messaged you when you were talking about it. I was like, please get me on that. And
Yes.
now we're here.
We're
and I'm so excited
here.
about it. It's like, it's real now. It's awesome. And I'm so stoked for you. I know it's something that you've just been envisioning and now it's like happening. And it's awesome. It just makes all of us so happy.
Oh, thank you. Literally, I'm like the sentiments already. But seriously, like we're here, we're in our best mutual friend's office. She's letting us record in this space today. We've been so lucky to have so many impactful people in our life and experiences. And we've probably been friends now for about 6 years, I would say.
Yep.
And little background, Chris and I actually met from my best friend Sam, whose office we're in. Her husband and him have played soccer together for a long time.
Yeah, I actually first met her husband Carl, 2013.
Okay.
We played on a team in Orange County together. Then he kind of he went to Orlando and then ended up in Phoenix here. And then a little bit after that, in 2016, is when he also convinced me to come out here. I was kind of looking for a new team and stuff, and he spoke to the coach as well, who's actually now my coach at Monterey Bay FC for my current team. He's brought me out there, Frank Gallup, and so but Carl was a big part of that, and Carl and I like best of friends as well. We were roommates on road trips. His locker is right next to mine, and we've known each other for years, and obviously the time of meeting you,
Exactly.
and so I mean, all kinds of wins.
Yes, so many wins, on and off the field. But truly, I just remember when Sam and Carl introduced me to you, and they're like, this is one of our ride or die friends, and we've been able to build that friendship together too, and just be a source of just reliability in each other's lives, because you have been such a fun friend of mine, and I truly value my male friendships in my life so much. And I know the best part about you is you value your female friendships in your life so
Absolutely.
much.
I think we've had tons of discussions of the opposite sex and things and what's going on in mentality and advice and things like that. And so I think it's always awesome to have like you, where I can bounce things off and hear very much like a woman's perspective on things, and obviously vice versa. I'm so happy to be able to do that as well for you. So it's just really cool to have that as well. And also our random FaceTimes with Sam all the time. From Cabo and stuff like that, just all over the place. And me out in Czech Republic.
Yeah,
and
you're in
Denmark,
Thailand, you're in Bangkok. We're like, what is Chris up to now? Soccer is taking him all over the freaking world. We never know what story to expect from you next. Cortez is one of my favorite storytellers of all time too. He always has a story. Thank God for keeping us all entertained.
Very, very, very true.
But Cortez is amazing, and he is just such a wholesome person. And like I said, my male friendships, not only having the perspective from the opposite sex on certain situations, but just in life, being able to have that connectability and respect for one another is really how I can define you, because we can talk about anything, and I love that about this. Yeah. And that's what we wanted to do on the podcast, so here we are.
Perfect.
Yes, but I feel like something when we were brainstorming what we wanted to talk about today was kind of how we're in a phase in our adult lives now where we are hyper aware and even more intentional in what we're doing and how we're acting, and that self-awareness journey of what we want to take on into our adult lives. And neither of us have children necessarily yet, but in our adult lives, just with or without a family, kind of how we want to be perceived, the things that have been handed down to us in our character, in our goals, in our beliefs. This is a large topic, but I feel like what we really want to hit on today is how your upbringing and your family imprints, your values, your work ethic, your beliefs. And the most interesting part about you being a professional athlete is kind of like also how that has imprinted on you and how you want to move forward in your adult life and your intentionality and your beliefs, and kind of how we're all in this phase of journey of being able to, it's not like, oh, we turn 30 and we start thinking about that. That's been something that's probably been since we've been independently on our own as adults, but I feel like now more than ever we're really, really aware of what characteristics we want to improve on. Yeah. Not complacency, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, what are we intentionally thinking about?
Yeah. I think for me, this is something we've discussed obviously over and over, and things that we get to bounce off. For me, if you want to talk about just like, it all very much meshes with me. One thing is that I've learned a lot of life lessons through soccer and through sport. Like, it's taught me a lot of like, right, extra work and doing a little bit extra and being proactive and understanding those things and being accountable for myself and admitting that I've made mistakes and learning from it, and how, right, I can do that stuff on the field. I'll go back and watch film, I'll be training and I'll mess up things in training, but I'll try new things. Afterwards, learn a new technique or a new way of shooting the ball or whatever it is.
Right.
And then just being able to like embrace that, and then from that learn, analyze the mistake, correct it, and then move on from it. And I think that's one thing that very much stands out to me, which is like kind of something we had talked about a little bit before. And I think that was an important thing growing up as well. And I realized I could use that with a lot of other things. I would apply that to things in school as well and everything like that.
Not just it being the characteristics you learn in playing sport, because I played soccer growing up too, so another reason why we connected.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
As both I'm a former athlete, you're still a current athlete, but those lessons that you learn on team sport too. I mean, I can't speak to individual sport because there's so many lessons I'm sure you learned in that too, but from someone who played team sport my whole life too, is the compatibility, adaptability of working with all different personality types, being able to be dependable, being reliable, being a good communicator. Communication on the field is massive.
Absolutely massive.
And then also being able to translate those characteristics to your point of being aware of like, you know what? That worked with my team on the field yesterday. What if I took that and worked it with my friendships, and
absolutely
things like that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that communication in a group and things, that's one thing I really for personally feel it's become more and more of I've realized it's a quality of mine that I never really thought of so much. But I actually have realized more and more, and people have spoken to me more and more about how I have an ability to kind of be able to say things in the right way for people, for them to grasp it, and also say it to where I'm not attacking your mistake. I'm just letting you know, hey, let's try this way instead, and that kind of things. So I think in soccer we call it man management, or like people management, as far as like, and it's a coach trait as well, right? Can coaches help manage a team and know when to push a player and when, hey, I need to yell at you so you start playing harder, and some guys will shut down with that, and knowing with that guy, hey, I need to almost like metaphorically put my arm around you a bit, right? And be like, hey, just keep going, encouraging. And knowing how to do what with people and stuff. And I think I've always had an ability to kind of read that from my own players, and I know when I can be like, come on, I got you, let's keep going, like pushing, or be like, hey, figure it out, man, like you need to fucking push more, right? And like some guys, that'll light a fire with them and they'll start going. So
I feel like a saying that I always love is, you can be a great player, but it doesn't mean you be a great coach, right?
Absolutely,
like there is so much adaptability to different personality types, and I think so highly of people like yourself who have that ability to transform and adapt and really be emotionally intelligent towards the people that you're speaking to, and understanding that everybody needs a different care and attention to be led and motivated. We all are motivated in entirely different ways. And all of us also have different triggers and different things that are going to make us shut down. And the thing that separates that for me is what makes not only a good player but a good coach is being able to be aware and removal of your ego.
I think that's massive. I think it's important. I think especially at the highest levels, like the big thing is it's being in this interesting state of very confident, like borderline cocky, because
Yeah.
the rub is you have to be kind of audacious, and you have to. There's times where you're just like, I'm just gonna try it, like see what happens, right? And you have to do this like
risk taking too, yeah.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, so you have to have this like quiet confidence, but at the same time, don't allow it to be over the top where you're like, again, we're talking about complacency and things like that. It's like not to where you're relaxed. It's like if you're relaxed and you think like, oh yeah, I'm good here, like that's a problem. You should be kind of antsy and wanting to push and wanting more.
Always self-improvement.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is individually, yeah, because also honestly as a team you're replaceable. A million people would love to be playing in your position, and so I think that's an important thing of like keeping that as well. And with the ego thing also, it's like it ties in accountability too, where it's like, hey, like I can recognize that I will make mistakes also. Everyone will on the field. It's just how are you reacting to it and things like that. You know, even if I mess up, am I still gonna, all right, next play I'm gonna make up for it. I'm gonna make it up for my teammates, or my teammates got my back, or I'll have their back when they make a mistake. And I think that's massively important as well.
Yeah, and it's adaptable and not just to sport. To your point, like someone who like me who's worked in the corporate world as well is team environments, team mentalities, and being able to say like, okay, if you're the leader of your team or you kind of step into that role, that's a lot of pressure on somebody's back, but it also takes that accountability to be like, all right, but if I step back and become complacent and I'm not motivating myself, that's a trickle down effect, and that's responsibility, yes, but we might not even be the leaders, we might be the followers. Like there's people out there that are not necessarily the leaders of their team or group in the work setting, but if they're not being motivated by that leader, then they need that fuel as well to their fire.
Yeah, I think the term we use a lot is culture. It's creating a culture in a locker room, in a team, in a club. Is having this culture, having this set of, this is our ideals, this is what we believe in, this is the way we do, we keep each other accountable, we push each other. And every team I've been in that's won a championship and stuff, you've always felt a culture, and you felt this mentality of every day guys are pushing each other and kind of sharpening each other, right, and challenging each other. And then we all joke about the end, because at the end we're teammates, and as soon as practice is done, hang out in the locker room, joke about, I got you on this, or oh, blah, 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 I like this play from you. And
the banter.
Absolutely. The banter in the locker room. Ruthless at times. That's for sure. Oh yeah, it's great. But you know, and at the same time, all that stuff helps in the building. All right, yeah, we're all just getting better to then be able to beat our opponent on the weekend.
Yeah, and I think it's those intangibles that make a group of people successful. You can have an incredible top recruit individual, like $1 million player on any team, or like this CEO of a former business coming to work for you at your office. Those things are great on paper, we love that, but if you guys don't gel as a group and release each other's egos, adapt to everybody's specific needs, it's those intangibles that are never going to make you guys succeed. I mean, you can succeed as an individual, but succeeding as a team is an entirely different soup. So with those intangibles, just like, what do you think are some characteristics and values of yours that bring your real life application to a team environment that have worked so well for you, or things that you believe that you're raised with that you really appreciate?
I think for me, one thing, work ethic, always, I think massive things my dad emphasized growing up. My dad works construction. He basically built his own business out of it and stuff. And he came to this country from Mexico at 17. Started out as, washing dishes, busboy. Worked as a cook. Kind of worked his way up in the restaurant business, but kind of slid over to construction and really started working his way as a guy who was doing labor. And now he can basically do anything and redo your entire house, kind of thing. And so I grew up helping him out, like over summers and things like that and stuff, and it was terrible times in a good way.
I've been lured into a few projects, but more voluntarily with my dad as well. But I can relate.
But I've helped him out with a lot of stuff, and I actually now can appreciate a lot of things in construction and how like a good entryway, a good driveway looks and things like that. I like nerd out on it. But I've learned to do a lot of that stuff. But on top of that, my dad used to say, it was a thing that always stuck with me as a life lesson. He said, for you, he said, I don't want you doing this. He said, unless this is something you truly love, but you see how much work this is.
Right.
And he said, for you, look, this was in high school. It's like you either do good in school or do good in soccer, but you need to work at one of those. If not, you're going to end up having to do something like this and breaking your back over this. And he said, I want something better for you. And he always kind of emphasized that and said, do well in school, go to college, try and find a career path, right? And it was never you have to be this or have to be that, but it was just very much a, hey, like, just work and take advantage of like what you've been given and really like try and find your pathway. But I think all that really started with a lot of that stuff was like work ethic. I think another thing is family values as well. My dad was always massive on, I have 2 siblings, obviously, you know, but yeah, so my brother and my sister were all 3 best friends, and my dad was very big on that from the beginning. Both of our parents super emphasized your siblings are always going to be there for you. Like, friends may come and go and stuff, but your siblings will always be your siblings. Yeah. Exactly. And they really are. They're my best friends, and they're always there. I mean, you've met them all too and stuff. Yeah. So it's So I think that was a big thing too, and I think I view a team as that as well, as a family too. And so taking that same thing into that environment of like, hey, I'm gonna fight for you guys. I'm gonna kill myself and my brothers on the team because I know they're gonna do the same for me.
Yeah, I think that loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a massive important thing, and for a coach as well. He's doing a lot of stuff off the field and trying to prepare, so I'm going to go back and respond and fight for him also.
Yeah, like any leader in life, if they don't respect you for working for them, that's just naturally not going to lend to you respecting them in return. That's one of those intangibles that I feel like is pretty obvious, but nobody ever really talks about. It's like leadership is going to be what stems from the top down. You know, people talk about that top down mentality all the time, but it's truly to the fact that respect from leadership, but also one another. That's what I think that elimination of the ego comes back into play, and being able to say, no, I just respect you, even if you're frustrated as hell with one of your teammates and they're doing something that you're like, fucking get it, you know, like someone is just like not understanding because they need to be taught in a different way and need to do more repetitions than maybe you, and you know, all those kind of patience exercises is being able to say, okay, not everyone is me. Everyone learns differently. Everyone learns at different rates, and
that's a huge one, actually.
Yeah, and being able to respect that.
That was one of the biggest starting points of conversations when I started working with my sports psychologist. Was about that stuff. He said, look, just because you see things or can do a certain pass or something doesn't mean everyone else can. Understand different people are good at different things, and realize like if someone misses a pass or something, don't get mad at them because it's not as if they're not trying to mess up.
Right.
They're
literally doing their best.
They're trying to get you the ball, but they just can't at times or things like that. And it was in my mind, I think that was the first time I was kind of like, oh wow, like I was thinking,
you stepped outside a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. And I thought that was like very opening as well. And I think, just one of many things I've worked with him about that he's like really helped with, just being able to see and open your mind up, kind of massage the brain to different perspectives and things like that.
Yes.
Really
unlearning and relearning.
Yeah, like a lot of rewiring, definitely.
Yes, but that's something we can all adapt to. Is just because you've been good at something your whole life, or maybe you've struggled at something your whole life. I mean, I can relate to that. I'm like struggled at my career life, my whole life. You know, it's like even if somebody takes 85 times to learn something and you get it on the first try, that being able to have that patience and adaptability makes you a good teammate, a good coworker, a good person in life. I mean, we all get frustrated in our day to day. I mean, you could be waiting at the gas pump for God's sake, and someone's like fumbling with their car, or like can't get the gas to be in their car, and you're like, come the fuck on, you're just filling your tank. How hard is it? But I mean, everyone's doing their best. Nobody wants to inconvenience people intentionally. Nobody wants to be able to feel like the low blow on the totem pole. Nobody wants to be that person. So I think having more grace for everybody on our teams, on our work staff, on our families, I think that's who we lose our patience with the most, because we've seen their entire lives not being able to have the patience with them. I think this is just a reminder to be able to tell everybody, like, everyone's learning at a different rate and doing their best. When you've been working either with your sports psychologist or even just in your own mind, like, what are some characteristics that you are working on establishing just from your own beliefs? Like something that maybe you weren't necessarily raised with, that you've been able to come to terms with, being like, A, I want to either change this narrative, or B, like, this is something that I want to be better at, even though I don't necessarily have it right now.
I think a big thing for me was getting rid of the excuses for myself and justifications for myself. Being very bluntly honest with myself. I think accountability is massive. One of the things I remember, especially when I was much younger as a player, and even I do it in real life as well, where I kind of justify things or blow things off and be like, oh, because of this and because of that, and it was like, oh well, you know, the coach this or the team this or the thing that, and then the reality is, I was like, that's a terrible. I didn't like that mentality.
Didn't sit with you well.
No, well, the thing was, it's a blame game, and it was like, and I started really kind of realizing, and I did some on my own, and then it's kind of also helped with him working, but it was just being honest with yourself and not cheating yourself, because the reality is, and we have a saying, it's a saying down in Mexico, it's like the green rectangle doesn't lie.
Okay.
We say that is like when you step out of the stadium, all truths are revealed. How much you've worked or not
worked. The green
worked.
rectangle referencing to the
Mm-hmm.
field for anyone who didn't get that.
So it's just that hey, sooner or later, like it's gonna be exposed.
Yeah.
So if you've not done enough shooting, if you've not done your lifting, if you've not done this, if you've not done that, like whatever it is, if you've not worked on certain things, like they will show up. And I think having the accountability instead of saying, oh yeah, he did this, like controlling myself and my thing and my improvement. Hey, you know what? I'm actually like one of the first things professionally when I started playing. I was, as a young kid, I'm a left-footed player,
Okay.
and I always had a left foot, and that was kind of a standout quality of mine.
Definitely more rare than right-footed.
Yeah,
excuse me.
but my right foot was average, honestly. There was a couple things I could do decently, but overall not nearly what I could do with my left.
Yeah.
And then one of my coaches said, you know, if you're a forward that's only, you know, more left foot than right, you're scoring half as many goals.
Right.
And I just sat there and was like, that was one of my first like mind blowing of like higher level kind of exposures and mentalities. And so what I started doing is I started working on my shooting right footed and started working on my crossing and working on all these things with my right foot and being able to be as close to a naturally two-footed player as possible. And it's massively helped me. And it was like, hey, being okay with like my right foot's not good enough.
And not making that the excuse.
And accepting that, you know what, my right foot's not good enough. And instead of like an excuse of, oh, well, it wasn't on my left foot, so that's why I couldn't score it. And it's like, no, like, make your right foot good enough, work on it enough to where, you know, when it's on your right foot, you still feel comfortable taking that shot or hitting that cross or whatever. How many more goals, how many more assists, how many more plays can you do because you're two-footed?
Right.
So
making your disadvantage more of an advantage.
Yeah, I think it's just very much being well-rounded, as we call it, just being a well-rounded player and that's what we talk about. People talk about fundamentals and things, and I think that's an important thing, is being able to hit a pass with both feet, being able to do a lot of things with both feet.
Yeah.
But all that came from me being honest with myself that, hey, my right foot's just not good enough right now. So, all right, let's make it good enough.
Yes.
And I think in general that accountability and instead of making excuses has massively helped me on and off the field. I think with relationships and things like that too.
Yeah.
I've had relationships in the past where I haven't been the best, and I would justify it as, oh, well, she was this and she was that.
Right, we all do that. Our ego doesn't want to take the ownership. We're always like, because they did this is why I did this, and because blank is X, Y, and Z, is the scenario is this way, is why I did this, and we can, to your point, the blame game all day. We can do that in any scenario in life. Oh, I was late because the coffee maker wasn't fast enough, not because I wasn't planning the time.
Not because I didn't wake up 5
Yeah.
Honestly,
yes.
And I think that's an important thing too. Is that whole thing, and so for me, that was a massive part of. I realized I hugely improved, and really started like feeling a growth in myself, personally and soccer wise. When that accountability started happening, I started being very bluntly honest with myself and looking at myself, and you know what, I don't like these things.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't like how I feel after I do this. Great, now let's work on it.
Where do you think that empowerment came from within you? Because I feel like so many people either surround themselves with people who make excuses, or are raised by people who are they're just constantly a audience to someone who's just raised them by, oh, well, my parents always made excuses, so that's okay because they turned out fine. Or, not saying that that's your case, but like people who are maybe feeling that they're stuck in that place of, dang, I am really like accusational of everyone else and not taking ownership, because that takes so much balls to be able to say like, I am taking ownership of my faults rather than blaming it on something else in a circumstance, a person, whatever you want to make the excuse to be. Where do you think that came from for you?
I think part of it's I'm a massive perfectionist.
Yeah. Where did that come from?
That came
We gotta dig deeper.
Really just layers up. I think a lot of that came from really wanting to, part of it was growing up. My dad was definitely hard on me with playing. He was hard on me because he knew, he saw something in me, and I know he said, he used to tell me all the time, the reason I push you is because he said, if you weren't good, I wouldn't push you. So if I saw that you were just an okay player and you could just be like okay and one of the other ones, it's fine. It's like, but I know he's like everyone, every team, every parent, everyone always sees you and knows you're like a little bit different.
Yeah.
At like 8, 9 years old, and so he used to push me more and demand more because he knew I could do more.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that was a big thing too, was having that turned into me setting standards for myself with this demand.
Okay.
Of wanting to, I used to want to please him and him be proud of me, have my mom be proud of me as well, right? My siblings, we would always go to each other's games.
Yeah.
And so to be able to like come off the field and have like big smiles from them.
Yeah, making them proud.
And like, just like that kind of thing, and be able to like hug them afterwards and be like, dude, that goal you scored, or that play, that pass, the way you dribbled that guy, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I'm a bit of a show off too. And so like to be able to show off for them.
Absolutely.
Right?
If that's
like,
what brings you joy and fulfillment and purpose, like that's your motivator.
Yeah,
there's nothing to be ashamed of that.
So that was a big thing for me, and I realized also what a good feeling I felt when I came off after a good game, how satisfied I am. And I'm like,
that was the motivator for me.
You know what I mean? It's just like, yes, that feels fantastic. And so I think internally as well as the external factors like the family and stuff, really kind of, that's what created me wanting to improve and be better. And then being a perfectionist.
Is it partially because you hate lacking that feeling more, lacking that feel of making them proud, or lacking that feel of being perfect? Like, because obviously we all want to be better at what we do. I think that's normal.
I think I have a terrible phobia of disappointment. And I have a terrible phobia of like regret.
Yeah.
I have this massive underlying fear of just like not reaching my full potential and then regretting it after I retire.
Yes, that is relatable.
And I think everyone has that at some point.
That fear.
But I think it's important, and I've been playing for a few years now.
Just a few, just a couple.
I was just talking about this the other day, with like Carl and stuff too. I was like, wow, I'm already in my 14th professional year.
Yes, congrats by the way. Let's not just shy over that. A lot of people don't make it that far. Yes.
But yeah, I think right, like all that is just like, wow, just like. It's kind of crazy to sit back and think about it, and now I reflect and think about it. And now I reflect and think about when I actually think about where I was as a player when I was 18, 19, 20, and where I've come and what I've done. Now I start to think and I start to reminisce, like, you know what? No, like I've done well. Like I don't really regret things. I've like soccer wise, I've accomplished some things. I've won some championships and stuff. And I like look at it, I'm like, okay, like, you know what? I'm really not like going to be disappointed in my career when I look back and that kind of things. And I look back at certain moments and certain teams and certain years and stuff. I'm like, man, I like really did some good stuff there. Yeah. And I think also at that point, it's like, hey, I've done these certain things and I know what I've done and I've liked it. Like where I've had a good goal scoring year or a year we've won a championship or a bit of both. And I'm like, that's my motivation. All right, I want to beat that next year. I want to compete myself. I want to score more goals than I did that season or last season or whatever it is. Right. And I think that's the thing is I massively like want to compete with myself too. Yeah. I view that as like a thing where it's like
huge trait of yours.
Yeah, I definitely like, and with that, that's where that accountability and that work comes from is like the fact that I want to improve. So I'm going to keep working at it and doing a lot of little extra things. Yeah. It's not just the day-to-day stuff and how am I still improving. And I still think I have a lot as a player that I can improve on. Yeah. I want to. And so I work on that.
And that fear is such a motivator. And I feel like the fear is motivating, but the more that you tap in and transition that into your flow of just getting better and competing against yourself.
Yeah. I think it's important that it's not something that freezes me. And I think that's the fact that I can look back and reflect and think, wow, like I've done some cool stuff. Really ease that fear into not something that's
you're running from.
Yeah. Or freaking out about. Right. But I'm like facing it, embracing it, and then like
acknowledging
it.
Just being like,
absolutely,
wow, I act like the fact that you can even admit like, you know what? I was genuinely afraid of regretting my entire career. Yeah. Like that's massive.
Oh, and I mean, I was like, I think the biggest thing I've always said, this is the thing is, the kind of two expressions is I want to be able to sleep at night. Yeah. Right. I don't want to have.
Don't we all insomnia?
You know
Yes.
Right. I don't want to like wake up in the night thinking, man, I could have done this more. I could have improved, and why didn't I? Or like that same saying, I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I can like stare at myself in the mirror and say, man, like, yeah.
I'd say that's one of your best traits too, is things not just on the soccer field, because I know that that's so much of who you are, but just as who you are as a person that I've gotten to know too, is your character of who you are is someone who's always wanted to be able to face themselves in the mirror and be proud. And I feel like you have such a good character as a human being, reliable, caring, like you have people in your lives' best interest. So I'd think that that was probably something that you probably motivate yourself to always be improving on too, because I can relate to that too. I never want to be like making someone feel bad, less than, uncomfortable, not seen, not heard. Like those are my motivators. But would you say that was handed down from either of your parents, like having those characteristics?
I think both of them, honestly, both of them were very very dependable growing up. My dad my dad, like I said, worked construction, so he would be up at 5:30 in the morning, right, going to work.
I'm like, if not earlier.
Seriously, like carrying block, like laying cement, whatever it is. He would come back, and then he would still take my brother and I and my sister. He'd take us to the park, and we would go train. Yeah, we would go train, and he would go. And I mean, he's exhausted after a day, and he could have easily just sat in front of the TV, but he took that extra step, and we used to drive all over the place. You know how it is. You drive everywhere for tournaments and stuff like that. So every weekend it was like, I mean, so
they're one day off, and
it's like, exactly. It's like, it'd be like, we're in Orange County, we'd drive up to like Bakersfield, Lancaster, like 3-4 hours away, down to San Diego, like a couple hours, be at a tournament all weekend, right? We'd play like 6 games. I'd miss like Monday of school because we'd be at a tournament. My mom or my dad would like take off of work that Monday, because it would be like, Mondays were usually like the championships and stuff too, and so they would like miss work and take us and everything. And so, and it was never you know what I mean?
It wasn't never made to make you feel guilty.
No, it was always like, hey, like, let's just get it on. Let's get on with it. This is what we got to do. This is what we're going to do, and blah, 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 and stuff.
But that respect and that, like, genuine compassion and who you are as a person is definitely
just having that. And then them with that discipline to, like, be able to do all that stuff and be able to coordinate and figure it out, and like figure out when we were playing at different fields, and my dad's taking my brother here, and my mom's taking me and my sister here, and all that kind of stuff. And so just being able to do all that, I think that was massive. And I will say there was it kind of became a thing as I got older. Parents split, and then it creates a big rift, right? And things kind of changed. The dynamic changed a bit. And I realized at the time I was 15, 16 when it was like happened officially and everything. And during that time, I had to start stepping up and being able to help as well out. Right?
Taking more of that leadership role.
Yeah, really, especially I'm the oldest sibling, so being able to kind of help siblings with either homework or make food or things like that at home, and trying to like, I want to be dependable. And especially my sister's 8 years younger. My brother's 2 years younger, so it was kind of like he was 14. He could take care of himself. My sister at the time was much younger, and so she's like, is in this also being there for her and being able to explain that like, you know, what happened with the parents and that kind of stuff. And
that responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah. And so I think that was like an important thing, is to be dependable for them as well, and be
that cemented that much further into you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now I've really tried to continue to be that person with my friends as well. And also, you know, if I'm in a relationship, it's the same kind of thing. I want to be a dependable person for my partner in life and things like that at some point, right? Because I would want obviously that reciprocated as well.
Yeah, the respect, the motivation, the admiration of each other. Absolutely. Exactly. That's how you treat everybody in your life. I agree.
Yeah. So that's, I think, but that's kind of how it started, and it's kind of, obviously I've grown for it, and I've really tried to maintain that as much as possible, and be able to answer your FaceTimes anytime.
And never miss a call.
Please respond.
Literally, Cortez is one of the most reliable people I've ever had in my life as far as never missing a phone call. And if he does, like, the immediate call back. I'm like, that level. Why is not everyone there? Oh my God, I love that. Thank you for dropping that in. I feel like Roundabout is just really being able to be applicable with your characteristics that you've learned on and off the field, and translating those characteristics that your parents passed down to you, and being able to not only have those incredible impressions in your life, and be able to say, okay, self, let's be honest and be real with each other.
Yeah. That's one of the most, like, it's a bit painful, because you have to admit that you're not good at something.
Yeah. And that there's room for improvement and ownership.
But once you, like, I think that's for the hardest part.
Yeah.
That was a part where I realized as a young player, I would kind of do that. Like, oh, well, he didn't do this cross quite as good or something. And it was like, well, if you were better at shooting, you could even score the bad crosses.
And that's a maturity thing. I think that's it. That's taking a step back and being able to say, like, some people stay in that mentality their whole life of the execution, like, I'm going to blame everybody else. I'm never the problem.
And I will say, I still feel a tendency to want to do that at times.
Of course, it's the easy way out. We all do.
And but I think it's important to, like, not allow that. Like, that feeling happens and I'll be like, oh, but this, and I'll be like, no, like, that's not a mentality. That's not solving, fixing the problem, and me really taking control of what I can and improving myself as much as possible to be able to do that. I think that's an important thing.
In the self-awareness, because to your point of something not soccer, like, in your life, is being able to say, okay, if I'm having these trends or these repetitions in my life,
negative patterns,
okay, like, I need to take ownership of, like, what am I keep running into this same recurring theme, like, oh, for example, like, if someone's like, I keep not being able to keep friends or I keep not being able to, you know, do well at X, Y, or Z, like, I keep making the same dish and it keeps coming out bad. I mean, it could literally be something as simple as a skill to as complex as your friendship or relationship dynamics or your family dynamics. And we are never going to be able to control the opposing party. You're never going to be able to control the pass coming to you. You're never going to be able to control how someone else kicks the ball. You're never going to be able to control how someone responds to your text. But, like, what are you taking ownership in every scenario, whether it's a play on the field or a conversation off the field, to be self-aware and not run into those same repetitive fundamentals where you're not taking ownership of what can you do to improve. Absolutely. And that is humbling, right? But because if you're not self-aware, you're not going to notice it. And if you don't want to let your ego be aside and take a seat on the bench, pun intended, you're not going to be able. The soccer puns, I love it. You're not going to be able to move past your repetitive traumas. Like, it's just going to, life's going to keep showing you the green rectangle doesn't lie.
Yeah. And I think you're not reaching a higher level. You're not improving also with that, right? Like, you're not becoming a better version. And it's like, you're not reaching a next level of yourself.
No.
Like, it's not Becca 87.0, 87.01 even, right?
Time to upgrade the app.
Right. But it's like, keep going. You know what I mean? And that's for me the big thing too. Is like, right, like, I continue to tap into and try to improve myself to reach full potential.
Absolutely.
And try as much as I can to, like, do that and live that life that way. And as a character, as a player, as whatever it is, like, right, as a family member, as a sibling, as a son, right? I think eventually we spoke about it as well, like
significant others.
Yeah, significant others. And also at some point I would like to be a father, and it's the same thing. I would want to do that as a father, and can I be same like that, dependable and always improving as a father, as an example for my kids.
Instilling those values on them too, like you were able to fortunately do. That's so true. Well, I have loved this. And likewise. I have 2 questions that I want to ask you to kind of wrap things up here today. So thank you for your insight as a professional athlete, and me who's not a professional athlete, being able to relate to these humbling characteristics that are passed down to us and what we want to embody and always be self-improving. But what would you say is your superpower? Like, what do you think is your strongest suit, your strongest characteristic, speaking of?
I think we touched on it a bit with like the man management and the people management. I think we were talking yesterday about read the room, right?
Read the room.
I think my ability to read the room.
Reading the room. Come join us. Read the room everywhere you are, please.
I think, I think being able to find out what a person, like, I think I have this innate ability to read a person and be able to talk to them and know within very short of meeting someone, I can figure out, like, oh, they like these certain things or they like this kind of stuff, and I can be very fluid with showing parts of myself that I know they'll like, to, like, kind of bridge that gap when I meet someone new. And then obviously when I open up more with friends and, you know, like you and I now and stuff, it's obviously we're so comfortable and everything, but it's that same thing of, I still know exactly, like, remembering things with you and we're both foodies massively, right?
Massive.
So things
like literally before we're recording this, watching food videos and eating gnocchi together.
Exactly. So, but I think that for me is a big thing, is my ability to just, like, read people's personalities and
your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think that awareness, I think for me is definitely one thing
In people management. I love that. Who knows where this is going to take you, man?
I know.
We can look back on this one day. All right. And then last but not least, this is the You're Grounded podcast after all. What do you like to do to stay grounded?
Well, is what I mentioned is about what do you define as grounded, right? And things like that. I think.
And I said that's up to you, Cortez.
Yeah. I think being grounded, I view as kind of two things. I think one is kind of being humble, and being that's what I view very much as being grounded is how are you staying level-headed, not letting things get to you, and not believing hypes. Keeping your feet on the ground is kind of obviously like your awareness
of your awareness and intentionality of being humble.
So I think back to that accountability of myself, things like that. I think the other thing with being grounded of you is like kind of finding solace among madness, because look, especially overseas in soccer, we travel all the time, we do all this stuff and everything and playing all the time, and it's crazy.
It's so hard not having that home base.
And so, and I mean I've lived in a lot of countries and stuff, so for me the other thing is having a routine. I have a routine very much during the week. A couple times a week I like to do a little bit extra shooting drills, I like to do some of the same ones because it makes me feel at home again. I like to there's a certain days I will lift and do gym and things like that, and certain stuff and certain comfort foods as well, honestly.
So your routine and some foods are your
I will
comforts.
sometimes I love pancakes on game days.
Yeah, okay, we love that.
The morning of a game, I love to make pancakes from scratch at home.
Love it.
And so and I find just when I'm doing that, it's like the beginning of the hype for a game.
Yeah.
Right. And so it'll be little things like that all the time.
That makes you feel no matter what city, no matter what country you're in, that helps you feel grounded.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, this is me, this is my routine. And I find solace in that and in myself amongst it all. I can still have my safe space and my safe flow of things. And
that control
that,
aspect.
that for me is like what really helps too, is having and the discipline to stick to that routine I think is important too, because when you stray from it, but it's like there are days I don't feel like doing a lift, or days I don't feel like doing extra streams. It's like after I do the first lift or do the first exercise or do the first shot,
just getting started,
once I do that, I'm like, oh yeah, this feels good, and then I keep going, and then by the end I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I did it. Right,
you get that response.
But
that
I think
keeps you going.
I think it's important to maintain that, like, I'm going to keep this routine, and that's it. There's no like, oh well, you know what, I don't really feel it today. It's like, no, this is just, I have to do this. I just have to, and that's it. And you view it as like a life or death. Like I have to do these things, and I have to do this routine. If not, I'm going to be exposed on the weekend. So I think that's important too. I think the two things for me that really keep me grounded is accountability and just forcing myself to, even when I don't want to do things, I know I still need to. That routine. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, thank you for everything. You've been amazing. A pleasure. And everyone else gets to enjoy the company of you now, too. So until our next episode, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Becca. Yay. Pleasure to be on here. I will absolutely be tuning in for all the rest of your podcasts. All the good things. Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of You're Grounded. Make sure to share this episode if it resonated with you, and rate this podcast on whatever streaming platform you like to listen from. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. All social platforms are titled You're Grounded Pod. Until next time, stay grounded.